CEO's laugh turned to silence as Housekeeper's unexpected challenge exposed an amazing truth. Julia's heart raced as the laughter erupted from the corner office. She had seen these gatherings before, executives in tailored suits, preening and posturing, celebrating their own brilliance while she worked in the shadows. With a mop in one hand and a smile crafted from years of resilience, she moved through the pristine floors of the corporate tower, trying to convince herself this life was merely a stepping stone. But today felt different. Today, the laughter wasn't just noise, it masked something sinister. An unattended murmured conversation snagged her attention, pulling her closer. Words like fraud, insider trading, and profit margins spiraled around her, each dragging her spirit deeper into the chilling reality of her surroundings. It was the company she cleaned for, the one that fed her child but built its empire on deceptive practices. Doubt gnawed at her, a bitter reminder of the sacrifices she made every day to provide a better life for her daughter. Was it time to speak up? Seconds stretched into tense minutes as Julia hesitated, the urge to confront the truth battling the fear of what it could cost her. Whispers calmed momentarily as the CEO, Tom, stood, basking in the half-hearted applause of his peers, an unparalleled picture of authority. The tightening in Julia's chest mirrored the frost in the air. She could dismiss the worries she felt for only so long. Just then, it clicked, a defining moment to shatter the scripted reverence for a man misled by his own delusions of grandeur. She stepped forward, heart thudding like a hammer against steel, finding courage painfully reminiscent of the desperation in her late mother's eyes. "Tom," she said, voice unsteady yet loud enough to garner attention. The laughter dissolved, replaced by an immediate, palpable weight in the air. Every gaze turned towards her, a tapestry of uncertainty woven in their eyes. Heart pounding, she truly believed that this moment could catalyze change. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Do you even know what's happening under your watch?" Her nervousness evaporated, replaced by a steely resolve. The laughter now felt like chains binding her, but the fear of her daughter growing up in a similar cycle fueled her boldness. Tom's reaction was immediate, a chuckle wafted through the room, belittling her with arrogance. She stood before the elite, an invisible storm brewing within, every laugh now a dagger to her intent. He waved dismissively, but she saw the unease flicker in his eyes. Did he fully comprehend the gravity of what he'd done? The scorn in Tom's laughter reverberated in her bones, igniting a fire within her. She suddenly realized this was not just about her life, it encompassed generations. Her mother, her daughter, they all deserved more. Yet, doubt lingered, taunting her resolve. Her gentle ambition felt dwarfed against the towering structure of this corporate behemoth. What if her fight led to nothing? Would it be worth all she'd built to protect her child's future? As she prepared herself to drop her final bombshell, tension thickened the air. Julia took a breath, the world around her faded, and she could almost hear her mother's distant voice encouraging her. This was her moment. Tom, caught between his privilege and impending accountability, suddenly appeared, a man shrunk down by his own ego. With her finger poised on destiny, Julia faced him, thinking only of her daughter's future and the choices that could redefine everything. Would the truth she was ready to unleash dismantle the illusion around them both? As she opened her mouth to speak, the weight of the moment felt like the universe was holding its breath, waiting for the undeniable explosion of authenticity. Would she emerge shackled in fear or find a way to embody the truth she sought? The silence was deafening as Julia stood on the precipice of change, her words hanging in the air like a suspended breath. For a moment, the atmosphere surged with electricity, the glimmer of potential igniting her resolve further. This was not merely a confrontation but a battleground of principles, where a common thread of truth wove itself through the tapestry of power that had ensnared so many. "Tom," she said again, voice steadier now, conviction eclipsing hesitation. "You're destroying lives for profit, and I can't let that happen without speaking out." The words felt foreign yet liberating, resonating with a force that surprised even her. The incredulous faces of CEOs, all seemingly untouchable, bore down on her like a heavy cloak, but their glances could not dampen the urgency swirling within her. Tom's facade faltered, surprise giving way to simmering anger as he processed her challenge. She could see his mind racing, calculating the damage her words could inflict on his meticulously constructed empire. But something else flickered behind his eyes, a sense of fear. She had breached the walls of his cushiony fortress, unveiling an undeniable truth that caught him off guard. "Who do you think you are?" he spat, attempting to regain control. The wave of disdain in his voice only stoked the fires growing within her. Julia forced her breathing to slow, refusing to let his aggression undermine her courage. "I'm the woman cleaning the stains you leave behind," she shot back, each word like a hammer striking an anvil. "I witness the wreckage every day, the lives shredded by greed, by your malice. And with every swipe of this mop, I refuse to accept that future." As silence reigned again, the executive shifted uneasily. She could feel the tremor of discomfort ripple through the room, a fracture in their collective confidence. There was power in that shift, a crack in the impenetrable armor of arrogance. For the first time, she felt her position redefined, not as a mere housekeeper but as a catalyst for change. Tom, sensing a loss of control, took a step forward, his voice low and menacing. "You have no idea who you're up against. I can destroy you." His threat rang hollow in her ears, offering nothing but desperation. Julia squared her shoulders, the reality forming in her mind. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was the possibility of something bigger, an opportunity to illuminate the injustices lurking in the shadows. "Then try," she said, a fierce spark igniting in her chest. "But remember, the truth has a way of surfacing. You may have power now, but every empire built on lies is destined to collapse." The weight of her declaration settled over the assembly like a heavy fog, transforming the relentless laughter into a palpable tension. Each face reflected not only shock but also the dawning realization of their own complicity. As she turned from Tom, a heady mix of exhilaration and fear coursed through her veins. The chains of subservience she had worn for so long seemed to dim in the light of courage she had just summoned. As she exited, the world outside felt momentarily brighter, infused with possibilities she had long thought unattainable. What if this was just the beginning? What if the very act of challenging Tom opened doors she had never envisioned? But stark reality loomed over her like a storm cloud. In those moments of courage, she had ignited not only hope but also a path fraught with danger. Battling a corrupt system required more than bold words, it needed a plan, a strategy that aligned with her newfound resolve. To challenge the monolith of deceit and injustice, she would have to delve deeper than mere confrontation. What was her next move? As she stepped into the sunlit corridor, adrenaline still thrumming in her veins, her thoughts raced. She was finally ready to reclaim the narrative of her life, to explore the depths of her own potential not as a cleaning lady, but as a woman ready to fight for truth and dignity. A flicker of an idea formed, perhaps building alliances with those who felt equally tethered. But what would her first step be? Julia cast a glance at the floor beneath her, wondering if it was time to stop cleaning the messes of others. She felt the stirrings of a bold plan forming, one that could spark an uprising of honesty against the very foundation of the establishment she had once served. The time to act was more than just coming soon, it was now. The breath of fresh air outside felt surreal after the weight of her confrontation. Julia leaned against the cool glass of the building's entrance, the distant hum of the city pulsating with life a stark contrast to the suffocating tension she had just left behind. It was a moment of reckoning, and the exhilaration was eclipsed by the gravity of her next steps. She knew she needed to formulate a plan, a way to harness the momentum she had unraveled. But how? The idea of alliances flitted through her mind like restless shadows, and it occurred to her that perhaps the janitorial staff, the people who, like her, swept the remnants of corporate life, might share the same longing for change. The thought ignited her resolve. How many others behind the polished marble floors shared her silent indignation? Julia had observed their faces, tired and resigned, echoing her own frustrations. They, too, carried the weight of the unspoken. Connecting with them could be the linchpin in her pursuit of truth. As she departed, her mind sharpened into focus. She decided to reach out to Marisol, a fellow janitor who had attended school for social work. Julia had often admired her passion for advocacy even when facing the daily grind of labor. This could be the ally she needed, someone with the knowledge of mobilizing change. The clatter of busy feet echoed in her ears as she crossed the street, the sun shining bright against her determination. She envisioned their discussion ahead, wary yet eager. Knowledge was power, and Marisol had a treasure trove of insights. Approaching her apartment, Julia hesitated at the door, contemplating the easy retreat into the mundane, her cleaning supplies waiting patiently in their designated corner. But the sound of her own heartbeat pushed her forward. She felt she had shifted, her very core now vibrating with potential. With a quick phone call, Julia set up a meeting with Marisol for the following day. Adrenaline coursed through her again, invigorating ideas springing to life as she pictured what they could accomplish together. The wheels of change were beginning to turn, and she grappled with the notion of gathering others, perhaps even reaching out to former employees of Tom's company. Would they be willing to stand in solidarity? Collectively, their voices could carve a path that would be hard to silence. That evening, sleeplessness invaded her thoughts, strategies coalescing into tangible shapes. Tonight would be different. She wouldn't dwell in despair or guilt but embrace the fire ignited by her confrontation. This sense of possibility summoned a daring resolve that propelled her well beyond the woman who once walked the halls in silence. The real work was just beginning. Conversations, alliances, and strategy melded with her growing understanding of the injustice that permeated her workplace. She even pondered if, in her initial confrontation, she had missed opportunities to expand her reach beyond Tom. What if others could be pulled into her righteous endeavor? Through the whispers of determination echoing in her heart, Julia felt the tangible pulse of emerging purpose. She had no idea how much resistance she would face or what sacrifices lay ahead, but she was prepared to face them. Her life was about to intertwine with the narratives of those who had brushed aside their own truths. With the city lights twinkling like stars in the distance, Julia's gaze hardened with resolve. The tide had turned. She felt an unshakable urge to lead the charge into uncharted territory. But how much would she have to sacrifice to face this powerful enemy, and would her newfound allies truly follow her into the fray? Tomorrow would bring clarity, or perhaps it would reveal more complexities. Either way, Julia was ready for the battlefield and she would not back down. The sun had barely risen, but Julia was already awake, her mind flickering with fragments of ideas. The promise of her meeting with Marisol pulsed like an electric current through her veins, urging her to shake off the remnants of fear that had once paralyzed her. Today was not just another day at work, it was the starting point for a transformation she had never anticipated. After a quick shower, Julia pulled on her work uniform, its fabric feeling almost foreign against her skin, symbolizing the duality she now faced. The mundane task of cleaning would serve as her cover, but beneath that, she was an architect of change even if her designs were still only rough sketches. As she entered the building, the familiar smells of disinfectants and polished wood resonated within her, an aroma she had dissociatively navigated hundreds of times. Today, however, they became symbols of her quiet rebellion. Each swipe of the mop was infused with purpose, each collection of trash a metaphor for gathering the discarded hopes of her colleagues. But this was dwelling on the past. She needed to think forward. With each passing hour, anticipation built within her. On breaks, she glanced at her phone, anxious to hear from Marisol. The chatter of coworkers faded into white noise, their small talk about trivial matters a stark reminder of the inertia she wished to escape. A part of her almost envied their ability to slip easily into routine, but then she remembered their shared struggles, the silent faces that mirrored her own despair. Those thoughts solidified her resolve. This could no longer be a solo venture. Finally, midday arrived. Julia found a quiet spot in a cramped break room, her heart racing as she prepared for the conversation ahead. When Marisol entered, with her dark hair pulled back and an air of tenacity surrounding her, Julia felt a wave of reassurance wash over her. This woman had faced her own challenges with bravery, and Julia recognized that they both stood on the brink of something powerful. "Hey, thanks for meeting me," Julia began, her voice thick with nerves. Marisol smiled, the warmth of her presence dissolving Julia's tension. "Of course. What is going on? You seemed pretty intense last time we spoke." Julia took a breath. "I'm tired of watching us get pushed around. There's too much at stake for us to remain silent. We need to do something, not just complain about things." Marisol nodded, sensing the gravity in Julia's tone. "I've seen the way management treats us, the way they disregard our concerns. We owe it to ourselves to speak up. But it won't be easy." Julia's voice wavered slightly. "What if we could gather support, not just from our department but also from others who have left? People need to feel empowered." "Absolutely," Marisol replied, her eyes lighting up. "People rally to a cause, they just need to see that the change is possible. Have you thought about how we can reach out?" The two women engaged in a rapid exchange of ideas, strategizing ways to approach the rest of their team and even former employees. With every suggestion exchanged, Julia felt a burgeoning sense of community. The walls of isolation began to crumble, replaced by the possibility of a collective voice. The weight of her previous isolation began to lighten, yet, amidst the exhilaration, doubt gnawed at Julia. What if they failed? What if those they reached out to decided to remain silent, choosing safety over rebellion? The fear of rejection lurked around every corner, whispering trepidation into her ear. In that moment of vulnerability, Julia paused. "Marisol, what if they don't want to hear what we have to say? What if we're met with anger or misunderstanding?" "Then we'll face it together," Marisol replied, conviction steadying her voice. "People surprise you, sometimes the ones who seem indifferent are the ones ready to listen. You'll never know until you try." Julia felt an unexpected surge of courage swell within her. It wasn't about avoiding conflict, it was about confronting it head-on. The path ahead was laden with uncertainty, but that was no longer something to fear, it was a challenge to embrace. As the meeting wrapped up, the two women solidified their next steps. The groundwork was laid, but Julia felt the growing weight of her aspirations. It was a burden she was determined to carry. Would she manage to draw others forth, or would she be left standing alone, confronting her fears in a crowded world? The journey ahead held no guarantees, but it beckoned with tantalizing potential. As she watched Marisol leave, Julia realized the real test awaited her outside of these discussions: the readiness to stand firm against a potent adversary. Moments later, her phone buzzed with a message loaded with urgency. It was from an anonymous former employee. "You better brace yourself. There are things you need to know about Tom." Julia's heart raced as she reread the text, uncertainty twisting in her gut. Had she truly uncovered the depth of the battle she was preparing to wage, and was she ready for the truth lurking just beneath the surface? Adrenaline coursed through Julia's veins as she studied the message on her phone, her mind racing to decode its implications. A single name echoed in the back of her thoughts: Tom. He was the very person who embodied the disconnect between the management and the staff, an enigma wrapped in polished bravado. The thought of uncovering dark secrets within a well-maintained facade both thrilled and terrified her. "Things you need to know about Tom," she whispered to herself, the words heavy with unfulfilled potential. What failure had she stumbled upon? A shiver of dread curved around her spine. This could be the ammunition they needed to challenge the status quo, or it could plunge her into deeper trouble. As evening approached, Julia found it hard to focus on her tasks. Each pile of dirt she swept felt insubstantial against the storm brewing within her mind. The other cleaning staff had always treated Tom as untouchable, a figure whose authority was not to be questioned. Their unquestioning loyalty stemmed from either fear or indoctrination, and in her heart, Julia knew it was time to shake this belief to its core. "Just learn more," she muttered under her breath, an unformed plan crystallizing in her mind. She needed to gather information, not just about Tom, but also about the internal dynamics that had long crumbled any sense of autonomy among the staff. If she could present a clearer picture, it would embolden others to speak up. Julia approached her work with renewed intensity, determined to remain perceptive lest she miss any clue or overheard comment that might provide insight. Each interaction became a potential puzzle piece in her growing scheme, but they were also riddled with her fears. Would anyone be willing to share? As she chatted with a senior coworker who often offered tidbits of gossip, Julia skillfully steered the conversation to Tom's leadership style. "I wonder how he manages to keep everyone so compliant," she inquired casually, hoping to gauge her colleague's feelings on the matter. "Compliant? Ha! That's one way to put it," her coworker replied, chuckling. "Just wait until his temper flares. He can put the fear of God in you. But I guess that keeps us all on our toes." Julia's heart sank. The dynamic was as she feared, intimidation masquerading as leadership. That very realization pushed her resolve into overdrive. Avoidance was no longer an option. Along with Marisol, they needed to shift the narrative. They could not just react, they had to be proactive. Later that night, sitting in her cramped apartment, she felt the familiar tremors of anxiety creep back in. What if she acted rashly? They were risking their jobs, their stability, to challenge a system that had long been oppressive. But then she thought of the faces of her co-workers, those lengthening shadows of disappointment, fear, and resignation. They deserved better, they deserved to know their worth. Her thoughts soon spiraled towards organizing a meeting, a genuine collective discussion where the unfiltered opinions of others could emerge. Each person's voice held value. Together, they would create a chorus of dissatisfaction that could no longer be ignored. But even as she plotted, unease nestled in her chest. Would everyone rally together in solidarity, or would they retreat into fear? Julia faced an internal battle, a desire to move forward clashing with the primal instinct to protect herself. In the midst of her planning, a soft chime echoed through her thoughts, the reminder of her anonymous tip regarding Tom. Surely, that information could be the catalyst they needed. As she continued to construct her plan, an unsettling thought crept in. Who else might be watching her? Who else might feel threatened by her burgeoning ambition? The uncertainty of unseen opponents added a layer of complication she hadn't anticipated. The pen hovered over the notepad before her, her ideas coalescing into something tangible but fraught with risk. Was she prepared to face the consequences of this meeting? As Julia pondered her next step, the moment of reckoning was palpable. The tension in the air thick enough to cut. Her phone lit up again, and she hesitated as she read the new message. "You need to meet me. It's vital for us. Trust me." Instinctively, her heart dropped. Who could it be, and what critical information were they offering? Julia's gut twisted as she considered what lay ahead: an opportunity, yes, but also a precarious leap from which there could be no return. Was she ready to confront not just the truth about Tom but the harrowing complexities of her own choices and the stakes involved? The shadows of her past choices loomed large, and the time had come to make a decision. The truth was closing in fast, and soon she would have to face whatever it revealed. Julia's heart raced as she stared at her phone, the message still glowing ominously on the screen. Who was this person, and why did they think she could trust them? The anonymity of the tip-off made it both enticing and dreadfully unsettling. She took a deep breath, a shiver rippling through her. Clenching and unclenching her fists helped channel the loose energy pulsing within her. Deciding to meet whoever it was added another layer of uncertainty to her already turbulent thoughts. She feared that exposing herself to an unknown element could lead her to dangerous waters. Yet, how could she turn back now? This was about more than just her job, it was about challenging the oppressive grasp Tom held over her team. The next morning, Julia woke restless but determined. She spent the day gathering her thoughts, formulating cautious strategies for the meeting ahead and considering how the information she might learn could potentially disrupt Tom's grip on power. Tension thrummed within her, and she felt the familiar itch of anxiety. What if this turned out to be a trap? Questions buzzed through her head like fireflies, the possibility of confrontation shook her to the core. On her break, she confided in Marisol about the mysterious message. "I'm meeting someone. They have something vital. Marisol's eyes narrowed with concern. Julia, you're stepping on thin ice. This could backfire tremendously. I know, Julia replied, her resolve shored up. But if there's a chance that learning more about Tom can help us, I have to take it. It might just be a whisper, but whispers can lead to revolutions in the most unexpected ways. The day dragged on as Julia's mind spun with strategic possibilities. What if the meeting yielded powerful insight into Tom's past, his weaknesses? What if this opened the door for her team to rally behind her? Doubt clouded her thoughts, but determination kept her grounded. That night, shivering with anticipation, she navigated to the proposed meeting location, a small cafe tucked away from the prying eyes of their office. As she pushed through the door, the scent of coffee washed over her, igniting an anxious warmth in her heart. She was ready, or at least she kept telling herself that. A hooded figure sat at a corner table, their face obscured. Julia's heart raced. It felt like stepping into a world riddled with secrets. The moment she approached, the individual straightened. Julia, you came. Who are you? She demanded, unable to mask her curiosity and fear. I'm someone who knows the truth about Tom, they replied quietly, revealing just enough to raise Julia's hopes and suspicions alike. Then why should I trust you? How do I know you're not sending me into a trap? The figure leaned in, their voice low, carrying an intensity that made Julia's heart quicken. Because I've seen what he has done. The way he manipulates those around him, the lies he has spun to keep control. You're not alone in this, Julia. We want change, and we're willing to help you empower your team. In that moment, Julia's thoughts collided. Each word was imbued with a mixture of promise and risk that gripped her tightly. Was this the breakthrough she had been seeking? Or was it the first step down a dark alley from which she might not return? Her pulse echoed in her ears as the figure revealed the shocking details about Tom's incompetency hidden behind charisma, the lies cultivated within a veil of professionalism. Each revelation fueled Julia's determination but deepened the chasm of uncertainty surrounding her next steps. As she contemplated the implications, another thought nagged at her conscience. What if this interaction had already drawn scrutiny? What if Tom had eyes everywhere, monitoring her movements and those of her co-workers? With a mix of hope and dread fueling her resolve, she decided to act. How do we move forward? She pressed that an intimate silence hung as the weight of their conversation settled. The stakes were higher now. Julia could feel them both inching closer to an invisible line that, once crossed, would lead to open confrontation, but an unsettling truth loomed in the background. Would they be able to navigate these dangers without falling prey to Tom's wrath? What unseen consequences awaited her for daring to defy the status quo? With a newfound vigor blooming in her heart, Julia nodded. It was now or never. An unformed plan embedded itself in her mind, bristling with possibility yet shrouded in danger. Little did she realize, the unfolding events would draw not only the team closer together but also pit her against Tom in a confrontation that would test her resolve like never before. The gravity of her choices weighed heavy, and as she left the cafe, she knew the time for action had come. With a fiery determination ignited, she stepped into the embrace of night, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The tense pulse of the unknown thrummed in her veins, a promise of revolution or a warning of despair. The first move had been made, but would it be the catalyst for change, or the spark of her undoing? The next morning brought a surge of adrenaline as Julia paced her apartment, grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. The air was thick with anticipation, each tick of the clock amplifying her resolve and fear. She was no longer just a bystander waiting for change, now, she was the spark in a powder keg ready to explode. The grit in her stomach was a reminder that decisive action was essential, and the uncertainty of the previous night's revelations echoed in her mind. As she prepped for work, she confronted herself in the bathroom mirror. "You're not alone, Julia." The words came out softly, a necessary mantra against her rising doubts. She couldn't afford to falter now. The meeting had ignited a fire in her that refused to burn out. Arriving at the office, the mundane chatter around her felt stifling. She slipped into her routine, but the hum of her coworkers blurred into a distant buzz. With each passing hour, the tension underneath her poised exterior grew, flickering like a flame poised to ignite. Tom's presence loomed large, a personification of the very authority she was daring to confront. A knot tightened in her stomach as she recalled his relentless grip on the company, stifling creativity, and undermining potential. During lunch, she gathered her team in a corner booth of the cafe down the street. The mundane cafe chatter filled the air, but Julia's mind was focused. She had to plant the seeds of change. Knowing that open discussion could draw unwanted attention, she approached the topic subtly. "What do you all think about our latest project? Are we really capitalizing on our ideas?" The response was tepid, filled with hesitance. But as her colleagues exchanged glances, she noticed something beneath their reluctance, a flicker of suppressed passion. It was there, buried beneath layers of fear of Tom's judgment and control. Encouraged, Julia pressed on. "I believe we have the talent to push our boundaries. There's so much potential waiting to be unleashed. What would you do differently?" The shift in energy was palpable, eyes widened, shoulders straightened. Soon, one by one, ideas began to flow around the table: deft plans, creative enthusiasm, innovations. Julia listened with hawkish intensity, not just soaking in their thoughts but keenly observing their expressions as well. Each suggestion denoted a hidden will for resistance against the stagnation that Tom had orchestrated. Rejuvenated, Julia recognized the growing strength of her team's voices. This momentum was key. What had begun as a struggle against silence transformed into something far more powerful: a collective yearning for autonomy and expression. They were ready to break free. She pushed back from the table, determination coursing through her. "If we harness this energy, we can challenge Tom," she declared confidently, though internally questioning whether they had the courage to follow through. Their responses were enthusiastic, but that enthusiasm mingled with apprehension. "What about Tom?" someone asked, brow furrowed with concern. Julia paused, grappling with the practicalities of her vision. "There are risks, but what if we could turn his policies upside down? Implement our ideas discreetly, lay the groundwork for true change. This is our chance to redefine the landscape of our workplace." In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited. Conversations about subtle strategies and supportive networks emerged within the team as they embraced the idea of collaboration under the shadow of danger. Julia felt as if she had pulled back a veil. She wasn't just breaking the mold, they were forging a new one together. As they wrapped up their discussion, Julia felt the shift within herself, a deeper understanding of what leadership entailed. It was about igniting passion, speaking truths, and wielding influence to empower others. But with this empowerment came the weight of potential confrontation with Tom. When the team dispersed, lingering energy clung to her, electrifying her resolve. But the nagging feeling returned: what exactly was Tom capable of when his authority was questioned? Julia took a deep breath as she entered the afternoon meeting, a clear reminder of her growing responsibility. This was no longer simply about her silent struggle, it was about leading her team into uncharted territory where their shared ambition could either shatter their chains or lead to dire repercussions. As she prepared for the confrontation that lay ahead, Julia steeled herself for the inevitable clash. Could her newfound fire withstand the storm Tom would unleash when he sensed rebellion brewing? The resolve had deepened, but the battle was yet to come. Julia felt the thrill of uncertainty ripple through her. No turning back now. Carefully navigating a world on the brink of upheaval, she prepared to face the consequences of her choices, both for herself and her team. Each moment ticked closer to a confrontation that could decide everything, but questions remained. What if the passion they uncovered sparked more than just ambitions? As she made her way toward the conference room, Julia's heart raced, aware that an unforgettable clash could redefine everything they worked for. Would the vision manifest, or would they become collateral damage in Tom's quest for control? Julia entered the conference room, heart pounding in sync with the cadence of her breath. The sterile white walls felt oppressive, each one closing in on her like the weight of expectation. As her colleagues shuffled into their seats, a hush fell over the group, underscoring the significance of this moment. The air crackled with anticipation and tension, mingling with her anticipation of the impending confrontation with Tom. Tom arrived, his trademark confidence emanating from every step. He settled into his chair at the head of the table, casting a keen eye over the gathered employees. As he began his presentation on quarterly metrics and employee efficiency, Julia fought to suppress the rolling tide of nerves. Each statistic he shared felt like an affront to the spirit they had just ignited. His voice was steady, dripping with a patronizing tone that edged on contempt. We need to maintain consistency in our output, even if it strays from creativity. Efficiency is the key to our survival in a competitive market, he asserted, his words snuffing out any remaining spark of innovation. Julia's stomach churned at his dismissal of her team's ideas. This was the crucible moment that required her to act. As she watched him speak, his body language punctuating every decree, she sensed vulnerability intermingled with his bravado. Beneath the veneer of authority, there was fear, a fear of change, of being exposed. "Tom, can I interject?" Her voice, surprisingly steady, echoed in the silence. Eyes turned toward her, surprise mingled with curiosity. She felt their weight bearing down, but also the quiet support simmering beneath the surface. "What is it, Julia?" He replied, eyebrows raised, a sardonic smile threatening to break his stern demeanor. She inhaled sharply, channeling every ounce of audacity she gleaned from her earlier conversations with her team. "I believe we need to capture the creativity that's being stifled. What's important is not just keeping the ship afloat but steering it toward uncharted waters. We can't be afraid to embrace the risks that come with real innovation." Tom's smile vanished, replaced with a fleeting moment of genuine confusion. The room fell into a tense quiet as each member of the team absorbed Julia's words like an electric current. "Is this your idea of a fun brainstorming session? We're talking business here, not art class," he countered sharply, trying to reassert his authority, but Julia pressed on, undeterred. "Business thrives on bold moves. What we're proposing is hardly whimsical. It's a strategy grounded in unlocking the potential that's been languishing in silence. Let us take calculated risks. Our competitors are already ahead, and we can't afford to lag behind." Tom leaned back, crossing his arms defensively, but she persisted. She noticed the barely contained enthusiasm swirling in her colleagues' expressions. It surged around her like a shield against his antagonism. They were rallying behind her, but was it enough to convince him? "Julia, this isn't a democracy," he shot back, eyes narrowing. "Have you lost sight of your place here?" "Actually, I found it," she replied, her voice unwavering. "This isn't just about me. It's about all of us who work here. We're more than just cogs in your machine." For a moment, Julia locked eyes with Tom, the atmosphere thickening with charged silence. His countenance faltered, the bravado faded, revealing flickers of uncertainty. Tom, the titan who demanded respect and obedience, was boxing himself into a corner. The silence stretched on, charged with the unspoken challenge she issued. Julia felt her heart race, hope and trepidation mingled within her. "If we don't try, we'll continue to drown in mediocrity. If you let us prove our worth, I can assure you the rewards will be undeniable." Tom's response hung in the balance, precarious like a tightrope walk. The room held collective breath, the stakes heightened beyond mere office dynamics. Could he deliver the blow that would shatter their burgeoning alliance? Or would he capitulate to the very change he feared? The clock ticked ominously, its sound amplifying the weight of their shared silence. The answer to Tom's next words would shape not just Julia's career but the entire team's future. Would they rise with her vision, or would they crumble beneath his tenacity? The moment lingered, and Julia readied herself, aware that whatever happened next was no longer merely about work, it was about her evolving identity, about harnessing her voice to lead in the face of adversity. Julia's thoughts raced as she clocked the seconds ticking by with agonizing slowness. The tension in the room was palpable, a living entity breathing down her neck. She could sense her colleagues' eyes oscillating between her and Tom, their expressions reflecting a mix of hope and anxiety. Moments like these, she understood, could define a career, a reputation, and her increasingly budding identity as a leader. Tom's gaze shifted, his mouth opening to respond, and Julia's heart thudded in sync with that motion. Would he dismiss her entirely, quelling her team's burgeoning enthusiasm with a tidal wave of corporate rhetoric? Or would he surprise her and recognize the potential of what she had laid out? That small flicker of uncertainty she'd witnessed earlier was now creeping closer to the surface, and she propelled herself to confront it head-on. "Julia," Tom finally began, but his voice was grating, strained. "This company, like any other, must follow protocols and established guidelines." With each word, she felt her earlier confidence being chipped away. Yet at that moment, she stood firmly rooted in her convictions. "Then perhaps it's time to re-evaluate those guidelines," she countered, internal resolve surging. "We're at a crossroads, and sticking to outdated processes might cost us dearly in the long run. It's more than just metrics, it's about the people behind those numbers." Before Tom could recover, she pressed on. "Our potential goes beyond the confines of your metrics. Don't we owe it to ourselves to see what could happen if we unleash our creativity? It's not just business, it's about igniting something that can revitalize this place." Tom's expression hardened, but a spark of uncertainty lurked behind his steely exterior. Julia could feel the energy in the room shift, their shared frustrations fused into a collective understanding. She was no longer being brave for herself alone, she was standing up for every single person who felt their contributions were muted under Tom's analytical governance. "Tempting as it is to shift the focus like this, the truth remains," he shot back, regaining some of his composure. "Risking resources is irresponsible, especially when we're already stable." At the heart of Tom's response lay fear of instability, of losing control. The realization deepened Julia's conviction. If they maintained the status quo, they would suffocate beneath its weight, but to challenge it required more than a single voice, it demanded a coalition. "I understand your concerns, Tom. But isn't stability just a synonym for stagnation in our industry?" With that, she turned to her colleagues, her voice rising above the clamor of defense. "Think about the last time any of us felt truly inspired. It wasn't because we consistently churned out results like robots, it was when we took the risk to innovate and share ideas, when we stepped out of our comfort zones together. Those moments fueled our passion." As soon as she finished, she caught the hesitant glances exchanged among her colleagues, vulnerability and determination reflected in their expressions. They were considering joining her cause, an exhilarating thought. Tom's glare burned hotter, yet Julia sensed it was no longer merely an expression of authority wielded against her. For the first time, he looked genuinely cornered, assessing not just her words but the strength of the support she was gathering. "Let's say I consider your proposal," he finally replied, carefully weighing his words. "What makes you so sure this is the direction we should take?" Julia met his gaze with unyielding resolve. "Because true growth doesn't come from playing it safe. It emerges from calculated risks and collaboration." It felt empowering to acknowledge that she could define her pathway even in corporate turbulence. Just as Tom was about to respond, the conference room door swung open, and in walked Ryan, the company's innovative lead developer, with his laptop in hand. "I just caught the tail end of that discussion," he announced, striding confidently up to the table, "and I think we need to consider some prototypes I've been working on. They could really set us apart." His timing couldn't have been more advantageous. The air crackled anew with potential disruption, transmuting both Tom's and Julia's attention toward Ryan. But while she welcomed Ryan's unexpected support, she felt an unfamiliar swell of unease bubbling within her. Was everyone so quick to buckle behind this new idea just because it was fresh, or were they bypassing the vital discussions that needed to be held? Only time would reveal whether this brief alliance would take root or lead them down a divergent path, but one thing was clear: her moment of courageous vulnerability had ignited a spark within her team. As Julia prepared for this unforeseen inflection point, she understood that leadership would demand a willingness to embrace the unknown along with a commitment to advocate for both innovation and calculated decisions. A new chapter of challenges lay ahead as they sought to explore the proposals, but the very foundation of their collaborative spirit had been tested and transformed. The question echoed in her mind: Would they collectively rise to face the mountain of uncertainty ahead, or would cracks in their unified front start to form? Julia stood in the conference room, the previous discussions swirling in her mind like an exhilarating whirlwind. What had begun as an act of defiance against Tom's authority had transformed into a platform for creativity and innovation that no one within the company had dared to explore before. This moment wasn't just about her, a cleaning lady who dared to step beyond societal bounds. It was about unity, potential, and rewriting their professional narratives. Ryan's unexpected entrance had not only diverted attention but also illustrated the ripple effects of their collective courage. His prototype, unveiled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, served as a catalyst for further discussion. Julia felt the weight of her teammates' eyes on her, sensing their anticipation and apprehension. This was her opportunity to bridge the gap between Tom's rigid directives and their burgeoning ideas. "Let us not just look at what we can achieve in theoretical terms," Julia began, her voice carrying the weight of newfound authority. "Let us assess how Ryan's proposals align with our goals and extend creativity into our projects. This isn't about jeopardizing what we've built, it's about enhancing it together." Tom's expression shifted, caught between disbelief and irritation. Yet Julia saw a flicker of uncertainty etched into his features. Doubt began to seep beneath the armor of his corporate facade. "You think you can just ambush me with new concepts?" he snapped, but Julia noticed the tension in his voice. "If you remain steadfast in your fear of change, our competitors will leave us behind." "It's time to lead differently," she asserted, her conviction drawing favorable nods from team members. As they rallied, a palpable electricity filled the room. Julia realized this wasn't just about her voice anymore, it was a chorus and ensemble of resolve and potential demanding to be unleashed. Tom struggled to regain control, his attempts becoming increasingly desperate. "That responsibility lies with me, and I won't allow it compromised by a sudden change of tune." But the tide had turned, and Julia placed her hands on the table, grounding herself. "Tom, you can't control innovation. It thrives on collaboration. We're here to discover new ways to elevate this company, not to sink under a mountain of calculated fear." In that moment, she felt a shift deep within her. Her transformation had stepped beyond initial confrontations with Tom and into genuine leadership territory. This dynamic was no longer about merely opposing him, it was about proposing solutions in a way that inspired others to engage. With her teammates emboldened by Julia's determination, they began to brainstorm ways to execute Ryan's ideas, further punctuating their points about innovation and growth. Tom's previous skepticism was met with a united front, each of Julia's co-workers leaning into her words, the fear dissipating like mist under the sun. As the meeting progressed, it became evident that Tom was becoming increasingly uncomfortable under their collaborative scrutiny. Julia's heart raced, pumping confidence into her resolve. Was this the moment where they could finally shatter the facade of intimidation he had meticulously maintained? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Tom's facade cracked entirely. "Fine!" he exclaimed, frustration brimming over. "You can work with Ryan on some trial proposals, but if they fail, I won't be the one to shoulder the blame." That moment was nothing less than a victory. Julia could see the glint of acceptance dawning in her colleague's eyes. They had seized an opportunity, not just for themselves but for everyone who had ever felt small beneath the towering expectations of corporate authority. She could feel an intoxicating mix of adrenaline and triumph coursing through her veins. Leaving the conference room, Julia couldn't suppress her smile. As sweat beads curled around her temples, she felt weightless for the first time in years. The power dynamic had shifted. They were not only seen, they were recognized as valuable resources in a field. Often plagued by disillusionment in the following weeks, Julia embraced her role in shaping the future of her department. She encouraged every voice, every idea, and saw innovation blossom from collaboratively generated concepts. Doug, Janice, and even Marisol contributed, their voices merging into a rich symphony of creativity that found its way into their projects and company philosophy. The respect Julia earned from Tom and her colleagues, the acknowledgement that she wasn't just the housekeeper anymore, came as a well-deserved reward. Her metamorphosis didn't conclude with confrontation, it soared into the embrace of acceptance. Each day propelled her further from her previous self, a woman constrained by her societal roles, to one who stood parallel to executives in meeting rooms, wielding influence within a transformative paradigm. As the company started receiving accolades for its newly embraced creative strategies, Julia realized that her pursuit of integrity and courage had catalyzed a revolution within her and her team. Recognition poured in, but more importantly, she redefined what it meant to lead from behind the mop and broom. Today, standing at work with cohesively united colleagues surrounding her, Julia's heart swelled with pride. Achieving not just a voice, but a respected position, she had transformed it into empowerment beyond her wildest expectations. Julia had conquered her fears and magnified the courage others had hidden within. Her journey from silence to resonance wasn't just about raising awareness, it was about building alliances, achieving recognition, and leading with purpose. And now, fellow viewers, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support by leaving a like now to feed the algorithm. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment below your reactions and theories about Julia's transformation. Your participation is vital in pushing the narrative of personal growth forward.